You wake up, and the first thing you feel is tired. Not the tired that sleep fixes, not the tired that a good weekend solves. Something older than that. Something that's been sitting behind your eyes for so long you've stopped noticing it. You make the coffee, you answer the emails, you show up. You perform the day with a competence that sometimes frightens you because the performance is so clean, so practiced, so completely disconnected from anything you actually feel. You say the right things at the right times. You laugh when laughter is expected. You are, by every measurable external standard, fine because you know. You know that behind the performance there is something you don't have a clean word for. Not sadness exactly, not depression in the way you were taught to understand it, because that's the person who can't get out of bed and you function. You go through experiences that should mean something, and they arrive at your chest already muted. You eat something you used to love, and it registers as information rather than pleasure. You achieve something and you feel, for exactly 30 seconds, something that resembles satisfaction before it dissolves. You look at your life from the outside and it looks like it should be enough, and then you feel guilty that it isn't, and then you feel guilty about the guilt. You carry that guilt quietly, the way you carry everything, without letting it show. The people closest to you have no idea. That might be the loneliest part. Here is the story the culture tells about depression. It looks like a person who can't get out of bed, who stops showering, a collapse. This story has produced an entire category of invisible suffering. People who do not match the poster, so they spend years telling themselves they don't qualify. You went looking for answers at some point. Maybe you took an online quiz, and you walked away thinking, that's not me, I'm not that bad, I still function, other people have it worse. Other people have it worse is the sentence that has kept more people suffering quietly than almost any other lie the culture tells. Because the culture has a vested interest in your functioning. The system does not care about your inner life, it cares about your output. A depressed person who still produces, who still meets deadlines, who still shows up, that person is, from the system's perspective, working correctly. Productivity culture doesn't just see high-functioning depression, it actively rewards it. They call you fine, they call you capable, they call you strong. And you have been so thoroughly convinced by their certainty that you stopped trusting your own experience. But you're not fine. You've just been performing fine for so long, you've forgotten the difference. Let's name what's actually happening, because it has a name. What you are experiencing has been called dysthymia, persistent depressive disorder, high-functioning depression, a chronic, low-grade depression that doesn't collapse your functioning, but quietly drains the color from everything. Not a storm, a permanent overcast. The thunderstorm gets evacuations, emergency responses, attention. The overcast sky just continues, day after day. And because there's no emergency, you assume nothing is wrong. You assume this is just adulthood. It isn't. Here's what's happening neurologically. Depression is fundamentally a problem of anhedonia, the reduced ability to feel pleasure or reward. In high-functioning depression, this system is dampened, not destroyed. The motor is running, but the feedback signal that tells you why you're moving, that signal is attenuated, quieter than it should be, returning less than it costs. Think of your nervous system as an instrument. Most people operate with the full range of emotional notes available. Your instrument is still playable, but the middle register, the vast territory of everyday pleasure and everyday meaning, has gone quiet. You keep playing because you know how the music is supposed to sound, but the notes aren't landing the way they should. Nobody in the audience can tell. That's the cruelty of it. Human beings did not evolve for the specific conditions of contemporary life. We evolved for natural rhythms, seasons, physical labor, genuine social interdependence, clear feedback between action and outcome. The modern environment produces enormous effort for delayed, abstract, invisible rewards. You are deprived, systematically, of the environmental inputs the human nervous system requires to maintain its baseline. Researcher Johann Hari concluded that depression is also a disconnection problem, a mismatch between what human beings need, genuine belonging, meaningful contribution, contact with nature, a sense of future, and what the modern environment delivers. Your brain isn't lying to you. It's been trying to tell you something for years. Here is where everything changes, not magically, but with the specific shift that comes when you stop trying to solve the wrong problem. The wrong problem is, why can't I just feel better? The right problem is, what has my life been consistently missing that my nervous system actually needs? That reframe is the difference between treating yourself as broken and treating yourself as deprived. High-functioning depression is often the result of living a life that is outwardly successful and inwardly nourishing almost no one. The structures were built according to external specifications rather than internal requirements. The sensible choices, the responsible choices. And somewhere in the execution of that life, the thing that makes life feel inhabited rather than performed got quietly crowded out. This is about beginning, slowly, carefully, to audit your life not for what it looks like, but for what it gives back. What activities return more than they cost? What relationships feel like actual nourishment? Where in your week you feel something recognizable as aliveness, and where you feel yourself going through the motions. People with high-functioning depression are too capable of sustaining the wrong conditions. The suffering doesn't force a change because it stays below the threshold of crisis. So the intervention has to come from you. Not through more discipline, not through a new morning routine, but through the slow, deliberate process of building a life organized around what your specific nervous system actually requires. Stop treating the absence of a clinical crisis as evidence that you're fine. Stop using other people's worse suffering as a reason to dismiss your own. The gray is not a perception problem, it's a deprivation problem. And it has a direction out that doesn't require you to become someone else. It requires you to begin taking seriously, for the first time, what you actually need. What you have been carrying is real. It is not imaginary, and it is not ingratitude, and it is not weakness. It is a real, deeply human experience of being disconnected from the things that make life feel inhabited rather than performed. You have been carrying it mostly alone, in a culture that could see your functioning and concluded it had no reason to look further. The fact that you kept functioning, that you showed up, that you met the deadlines, that you held it together, that is not evidence the suffering wasn't real. It is evidence of how much you were willing to carry without complaint. You owed yourself more honesty than the culture ever encouraged you to have. High-functioning depression is, in its strange way, a form of loyalty. Loyalty to the structures and expectations you took on. Loyalty to people who needed you to be fine. You have been so busy being reliable for everyone else that you have not yet been reliable for yourself. That can change. The specific tiredness you feel, the one that isn't fixed by sleep, the one that was there before you opened your eyes this morning, That tiredness is not a sign you are broken. It is a sign that you have been working too long at a job you were never designed to sustain, the job of being fine when you aren't. You are not fine. You were never broken. You are someone who has been surviving a sustained mismatch between who you are and the conditions you've been living inside. Survival was the right goal, but survival was never supposed to be the end of the story. If this found you somewhere you've lived quietly for a long time, leave a comment, subscribe. You are not alone in this, and you are not as fine as everyone thinks. Both of those things are true.